Hey, hi. Welcome. Hi, I'm Richert Belul. Happy to be here with Cynthia Cummins, who is the owner and principal realtor of Kindred SF Homes. And Cynthia, thank you so much for coming to hang out with me for a little while today.
Oh, I love hanging out with you, especially on a beautiful day like today.
I
Um,
know. I love that. I love your background. I love where you are. And just a couple of things. One is you're one of the people that I'm so grateful who I interviewed in my upcoming end of life planner, The Love List of a Lifetime. And I really loved all of our conversations for the book. And I wanted to just start us today with just one of the quotes that I think will sort of launch us into a conversation.
oh, yeah, I'll be surprised about whatever that is.
I know it's been a long time. All right. So you said, as a realtor, I'm helping people establish their home and be happy there. I hope they're going to live a rich, full life in that house. But part of the picture includes thinking about illness or dying and what happens next. I've witnessed that joy of a lifetime in a beloved home. And unfortunately, I've also witnessed the absolute tragedy of what's left behind when somebody didn't think ahead. And so, it was a powerful statement. And I, it's also so poignant, right? Like most of us, we're not like thinking about end of life,
Right.
if at all much. But that idea of our home, and I just love for you to speak to whatever's top of mind for you right now about end of life and the homes that we have.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, home for real estate, the angle here is about real estate and home. And a lot of people, I think, forget that home is home, right? It's not, um, it's where we live. And a lot of different things happen while we're living. And a lot of things lead up. I mean, you can have a long run up, a long decline, you can have a sudden illness. There's all sorts of things that can go wrong. Divorce, death,
Yeah.
all those things. And yes, we get to celebrate birthdays and we get to send kids off to college. We welcome home new babies. We do all
Oh,
those things. But another part of life, and it can be a beautiful part of life, is the leaving of it.
wow.
And yes, unfortunately, I've seen a lot of cases where I think the fear of that ending gets in the way of some practical planning and thoughtfulness about those who are left behind.
Yeah. Wow. That was so poignant when you said that. I felt myself get kind of teary, because it's that sort of, and I think this is the thing, right? I think this is partly what I think makes it hard to talk about end of life, right? Is because we've got births and we've got, graduations and sending our kids to school. And then before we know it, I mean, it feels to me like, I'm like,
Yeah.
how did I get to be 60? What the heck?
Right.
And then
Right.
suddenly it doesn't seem like there's endless time anymore. And I think that's the thing when you were sharing that it's like, wow. Yeah. And so I would love to talk about that because I feel like, even in our 40s, our 50s, our 60s, which I think most people aren't usually thinking at that point, but then we need to be thinking about our homes and the people that we're leaving behind. And should something happen, what else do you want to share around that?
Well, one thing that I actually, this thought that I had that you and I didn't talk about, and it just popped up for me, and it's something I don't know a lot about. So I may be misrepresenting this, but there's this thing called Swedish death cleaning.
Yes,
Have you
yes.
heard? Okay. So, which I think basically is decluttering and preparing one's material things and home in a way that you can leave and not burden people with that.
Yes.
And I was talking about fear. There's always a lot of fear around any change with home for whatever reason. Say I'm newly married and I'm going to move in with my husband. Um, that's very exciting, but there's some fears with that. Am I going to be giving up my autonomy? Am I what if this doesn't work out? And I think a lot of people they want home to forever feel like that wonderful place where the whole family gathered together and there were all these happy memories.
Yeah.
But when you get up, a lot of times what I've seen is you get up to 80 or 90 years old, and that world begins to shrink. That home becomes sort of a hollow shell of what used to be there, and it's just sad. It's just sad. Um, I mean, we've all had that. I don't know. I've had that experience of going through the things that somebody left behind,
Yes.
and they didn't think about it in advance. And there I am looking at, old legs pantyhose
Oh,
and, um, uh, a collection of bread wrapper tabs and just wine that's gone bad.
wow.
And it would be so nice if I would like to think that when I leave, I'd like to leave a nice little tableau for my children to witness and see, you know, get rid of all the detritus that doesn't say what I want to say about my life.
Yes. And you know what? Also, because that's been a big thing for me, full disclosure, I have been, I don't like the term pack rat, but it's like I'm a very sentimental person and I collect, every paper my son ever did and all of that sort of thing. But at some point it occurred to me that if I were to just pass away unexpectedly, that it would be like a junkyard and that it would be super hard for people to find those treasures. There would be treasures, and there are. And that's what really got me thinking about exactly what you're saying. And one of the things I'm going to share it because it's a favorite story that just happened Mother's Day, this last Mother's Day. I had literally dozens of boxes of my son's artwork and school papers and writing and poetry and you name it, medals and he had just happened to come home from France. He'd been gone for a couple of years. And I said, will you help me? Will you help me? And he said, yeah, I mean, he's all for getting rid of stuff. And we spent 10 hours like going through all that stuff. And it was such a joy. We got rid of 90% of it. I have like one binder of things that he really cares about that when I die, it will matter to him. Otherwise, he would have thrown away that. I know
Right.
it, right?
Right. And you can miss some of the treasure when it's in the middle of a junkyard. It somehow just denudes it of meaning.
Yes.
It's yeah, it doesn't shine.
You know what? Beautifully said. And his point, this has been something he said to me over and over again, which is, Mom, all that stuff you have stashed away is bringing you no joy. You don't even look at it because it's so packed away and it's overwhelming. And he's like, at least if you pull it out once and then you get rid of it, you're at least having the current joy of it before you get rid of it, which is what happened, with a lot of those things. I took pictures, I did say, I saved a lot of things digitally, but it was, and it was funny because you can only imagine like the shame, like the, pseudo shame, but he'd be like, I can't believe you kept this. This meant nothing to me,
Right. Yeah. And, and you take photos, you may never look at them.
Right.
You may never look at them. But there's some closure in doing that,
Yeah.
Exactly. I don't know. When you were talking about things not bringing you joy, that's the thing that really breaks my heart when I'm working with somebody who suddenly has to go into assisted living or they're ill, they're trapped, they have to move. They don't know that there are a family of raccoons living on the second floor because they can't get up to the second floor anymore. But I was just thought about my aunt, my dear aunt, my mother's sister, who was a collector, And she was the oldest daughter. She had my great grandfather's banjo. My great grandfather's banjo was among the things that she was holding on to.
Wow.
And I play the banjo
Oh,
badly, but I play it, and I'm a musician.
I've
And
heard you play.
we kept asking, I kept saying, do you think I could have the banjo?
Yeah.
Could I keep the banjo for a little while? And she kept saying, well, maybe one day, maybe one day. Now, mind you, it was just sitting in a storage unit. It was, in her house, it was in a storage unit, and decades went by. And she never gave me the banjo, and she died. And I don't know what happened to it now.
Cynthia.
And to talk about
Oh,
the joy we could have had playing my great grandfather's banjo. Wouldn't that have
oh,
been fun?
oh, honey, that really, and that is the story, right? Like I think that's what people need to hear, that, yeah, like let it be alive in somebody's life, right?
Right.
Yeah.
It's like a lot of things. I remember listening to, I think it was on Terry Gross on Fresh Air, talking with an organizer or somebody about sweaters, like sweaters that she was saving, sweaters she never wore anymore, but she had drawers full of them that were nice, warm sweaters that she would have in case there was an apocalypse or she ran out of money, right? She'd have these sweaters.
Right.
And I think I'm getting it right. But, this person said, there's probably somebody who could use that sweater right now who's having their own personal apocalypse and they're cold. They could use that sweater. And you've just got it tucked in a drawer.
Yeah.
And it's also a way to, like, you spent that time with your son. What a great way to just, even in little, you don't have to do 10 hours, but little increments, just have some
Right.
together time.
Right. And it was, I mean, it was a wonderful walk down memory lane. And it was a way for me to release those things with laughter and joy. And believe me, I couldn't have done that alone. So that's one of my favorite new tricks is, have the person, I've got I've got dossiers on all my friends, cards and things. And I'm thinking I want to do the same thing, like enjoy it with them and then let it go. I love that you brought this up, and it's huge. And I think everybody I've ever talked to has a story of suddenly owning a whole house full of things that it's overwhelming and really hard to go through.
Yeah. I have a client right now. She's doing it, and her mother died, I don't know, about 9 months ago. And she's been spending every weekend, from leaving her kids in somebody's care and going to her mom's old house, and going through stuff, trying to clear it out, trying to figure out how to dispense with things, because not a lot of people want the nuclear option of just, calling a holler and sending it all away. You want to feel like it had some meaning. And the meaning comes from going through all of that crap. Excuse my French. And then, you never know if there's that part. And then there's the part of getting trapped in a house and living in a house where raccoons do move in because there's a broken window, or, suddenly you've got mold and dry rot because there was a leak that went undiagnosed.
Wow.
And or an electrical fire that starts. There's so many aspects to keeping a home alive, and it's really keeping a home alive. It requires a lot of maintenance and attention. And as we get older, we just don't have that much bandwidth anymore. It's hard.
I am so glad that you brought this up because I was going to ask you if we could talk about it for just a minute because I know that you have, a lot of things to say about this, and I have a lot of feelings around like we live in a society where I know that there's not as many choices as we wish for what we can do, how we can leave our homes as we're aging and find someplace that, we feel at home,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
However, I think for so many people, and I'd love for you to talk to this for a minute, for so many people, there's that like, I'm not going to leave. I want to, I just want to be here. And you kind of just alluded to a few things, but if you could underscore a little more, like a solo person, you know, growing old and hoping to pass away in their home, what does that look like?
Well, I've seen all variations on that theme. But a lot of times it just gets put off and ignored. And pretty soon a person has some sort of a medical issue or an accident or something happens and they have to pay attention to it. I mean, there's so many alternatives like in San Francisco. There's senior daycare. They come pick you up, they take you to a
Oh,
place. I mean, there's a lot of great support
yeah.
for aging in place. So many resources. Um, and and then of course there's 55 and older communities. There's assisted living. There's all kinds of ways to go, and I think trying to get out in front of it while one is
Yes.
still young and you're not youngish, and so that one can have a lot of freedom in these later years instead of being confined to this one setting. Now, maybe maybe money's not an issue. Somebody can have 24/7 round the clock care but there's alternatives to that. One of my friends, she's a realtor who's dedicated to setting up co-housing for people as they're getting older.
Ooh.
Like say 4 girlfriends buying a 4-unit building together where they each have
Oh,
an apartment, right? So they're not isolated.
yes.
And there's all kinds of creative ideas. Let's say an older person who has a 2-unit building in San Francisco, and they live maybe in the downstairs flat. Now their upstairs neighbor leaves. This is a great time to think about, making something that'll support a grandchild's financial independence. Let them become a part owner in the building. Let them move in
Oh,
upstairs.
wow.
Have a contract, have an understanding about how this is going to work. But then there you've got somebody who's close by, and you're benefiting them and they're benefiting you. So it's just like the American dream of homeownership, I think, is really outdated. There's a lot of reasons not to buy a house. Yes, I said
I
that.
know. I'm like, I can't believe it. I
There's a
can't
lot of
believe
reasons.
that.
A lot of reasons not to buy a house. And if you're going to buy a house, it doesn't have to be a house. It can be a condo. It can be a 1-bedroom condo. It can be a studio. It can, you don't have to have a yard, and you don't have to have a 30-year mortgage. But by the same token, our later years don't need to be spent looking this one particular way. There's all
Ah,
kinds of ways to open it up, I think.
I mean, I know I didn't even say this when we first started, but of course I know that you're a writer as well as musician and many other things, right? And I love the way that I can see, right, this creative part of your life coming through into this realm. And I love that. Like, to me, as soon as you started talking about, well, there's this or there's this, like, I don't know, I feel like I don't hear that much out in the world. And maybe I'm running in the wrong circles, but I'm so grateful to hear you saying these things.
Well, I'm grateful for you listening to them and having me on here today. I don't know, I just think there's a lot of different ways that it can look, but it's like a lot, we get stuck in our ways. We get accustomed to things being, like I'll meet people all the time who they bought a house and there was some flaw with it. Like I don't know, like you have to go through the garage to get to the bedroom downstairs or
Right,
the
right, right.
illegal in-law downstairs, something they hated. But over the years, they've grown to think that it's a benefit. It's like a bonus. And like, in fact, if I'm selling that house, they'll be like, well, don't forget to mention that you have to
Oh,
go through the garage to get to the bedroom. And I'm like, wait a minute, that's not a positive for most buyers, right? But people get used to what they get used to, you know. But
yeah.
there's so many, the little bit of creativity or taking advantage of, like, I forgive me, I'm going to forget the name, the San Francisco Institute on Aging.
Uh-huh.
There's a lot of different Unlock. There's a lot of different organizations that can help with this sort of thing. They can help people get out in front of aging, and they can still age in place.
And I thank you because you've now used that expression get out in front of a couple times. And to me, that's key. I mean, I can think right now of so many situations I know where people's parents, I mean, I'm 60, so I know a lot of people whose parents are, in their 80s, and they just didn't want to talk about it. They didn't want to think about it. They didn't want to talk about it. And then it's like the choices narrow so much once, right? Like I know people who, you know, are aging alone. Maybe they have healthcare coming in, but they're so depressed. It's
Right.
so lonely. And had they thought about like what you're saying, I mean, whether it's a girlfriend or a niece or nephew or grandchild or somebody to come in and take that extra bedroom, for instance, which is also good for the world, right? I mean, I think that's the other thing. It's like good for the world to
Right.
share. But you have to, I mean, you really have to do that when you're sort of able.
Right, because as we get older, like I told you I went for a hike earlier today, and it's a little more of a huff and puff than it used to be to go on this one trail, right? It used to be zip, zip, there we are. Today I had to stop and rest a few times, and I'm 68. So what I'm a little bit tired sometimes. We don't have as much energy when we get older. So how are we gonna deal with a 5-bedroom, 3,000 square foot
Yes.
house? We're just not gonna be able, and it is going to be depressing. It is going to
It
be depressing.
is. It is. Right. And, I know we have to hop off in a minute, but I feel like this isn't easy to talk about, right? It's not like this isn't like, it's not that like, well, I was gonna say it's not happy, but I do actually think it can be happy. I think this can be a joyful conversation thanks to like what you're saying. And this is what I hope to do, right, with the book is it's like get people up ahead of it. And again, even in our 40s, our 50s, because we don't know, as you pointed out, any of us could get sick at any moment, anything could happen.
Right.
And there's a real freedom to thinking through these things and feeling um, like I had someone who is a Swedish death cleaner say, like, it feels really good to take responsibility for our lives and the things we've brought into this home.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why it's so important to have, I think, have an estate plan, have long-term care insurance, or at least investigate it. Have all these little nuts and bolts things kind of shored up while you're young. Think about it
Yes.
now. And then you have a lot more freedom to be creative, and you can just have the peace of mind knowing that you've addressed it. And you've also faced that vague fear, right? Facing the reality that we will all die. One way I face that is by watching horror shows, certain kind of horror movies I really enjoy. Because I was talking with my partner, and he was saying, it really is all about the fear of death, as
Yes.
in your own death. But there's other ways to touch that that
Yeah.
might be more helpful. I mean, think of all the horror movies that are set in an old decrepit house that's been neglected. And maybe there's some old person living there who's hearing raccoons upstairs, but they think it's a ghost, you know.
What?
I don't know.
Cynthia,
Sorry.
thanks for ending our beautiful conversation on that horrid. No, I'm just kidding. No, so let's just say that. Like maybe let's leave people with the question of, you know, if it's a monster under the bed, which it is for many people, what's just like one small step, to facing it? Because you're right. Like I think it's really important. And yeah.
Right. And I think I mean, there's all kinds of different ways. A lot of it would be get a friend, somebody to hold your hand. That's where a really a compassionate, trustworthy realtor comes in, because they have a really good overview of these things. And if they're doing their job, all they care about is your progress in life. They're not there to sell your house. They're not there to,
Oh,
make you sign up for XYZ, but they can be a good ally in these moments.
I love
Find
that.
a friend.
Yeah. Just before we go, I mean, if anyone's listening to you and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I love her," can people contact you as a realtor? Where do you want them to find you?
Oh, sure. Well, my website is Kindred SF, as in San Francisco, homes.com. KindredSFhomes.com. You can find me there. I have a YouTube channel and blog called Real Estate Therapy, realestathetherapy.org. They can ask you.
Absolutely, and I'll probably post it right underneath this video to make it super simple. But
Exactly.
listen, I have to have us close out. I feel like I could talk to you for hours about many aspects of this. But Cynthia, thank you. I really love so much, and I always have. Like I love the way you approach things. I love you have a generous spirit about it, and I think you bring that little touch of humor, which is necessary. Yeah.
It is helpful. It's just like with a good horror movie, you've got to have some humor, or it'll just undo you. And now I think people are scared of real estate agents, right? There's a fear of realtors, and there's reasons for that. But I'm not scary. And if somebody just wants to talk something through with me, I'm happy to give a little bit of my time.
I love
No agenda.
You know what? Thank you. And this has been such a gift, such a gift. Thank you so much. I hope we can do this again in maybe the next few months. We'll get
Yes,
back on.
I love it.
Mwah.
Thanks.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you. Thank you. And anybody watching this now or later, thank you so much. And get up in front of it, as Cynthia said. That is my favorite quote from today.
All right.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye.